Okie doke. Let's try this boss. It seems like it's behaving right now, so take advantage of this window of decent internet and try the boss fight. Oh, it's one of the ones in a side area. Okay. I have never fought this guy before.
I can feel its power. That's it.
I have no idea what this man does. I'm assuming this is the boss? Yep.
Exile. He stirs.
I see that.
I am the doom at the door.
My mana is gone.
What is this laser beam thing? Nope.
Wasteland.
Not right now, friend. He did a big ol' slam and left behind some sort of dot.
Purify.
I don't know what that means. Probably don't want to stand in that, though.
You will fail. I will never yield.
He's got a second phase. Looks like an ad phase.
We cannot defeat him directly. Use explosives to damage the flame.
Traitor. Wasteland.
Does he have a third phase? That's all I'm worried about now that I know this boss can phase.
Starfire.
This guy's gonna have to wait.
I cannot die. I cannot yield.
Give me another explosive. Oh, fuck, I just want to be done with this, man. This is stressful. That's a nasty dot.
Use the explosives again. Damage the Triskelion flame.
You've doomed
I'm
us
not up to that
all.
just yet.
Wasteland.
Okay, there's a lot of dot in this arena now.
Wasteland.
My hands are fucking shaking! Come on, man! I had that, but I couldn't look at my hands. That's so annoying. No, I wasn't close to death. I didn't log because I was close to death. I logged because my hand wouldn't stop shaking. I couldn't control my character. I don't know why. Ow. Ow. Alright, I just wanted to get a Ball Grace before I went in. I didn't see any reason not to. Three phases? Well, this is his third.
Wasteland.
Fucking hand, man! Okay, we got him. My hand, you probably heard it. My hand was shaking so hard it slapped against the fucking keyboard at the end. Ah!
At least Olroth can finally rest.
Why? Why do I get shaky hands whenever I'm nervous? It's the worst thing as someone who plays video games for a living. Anyways, hi, thank you for the raid. Got Olroth down. That was the first Olroth I've ever found. I logged midway through the fight because my hand was shaking super hard. I didn't actually come close to death at any point in that fight. I had IRL problems. Howdy, guys. What you just saw was my first blind encounter with Olroth, who is the boss of the Knights faction, I think. Danig's lore-related boss, and the most difficult. Maybe not the most difficult. Uhtred is also pretty tough. Olroth is a more lengthy fight, though, with the forced phases happening 3 times during the fight. And yeah, the character handled it beautifully, and I wanted to give you all an update on how the ward stacking Pathfinder build is going. So, full disclosure, the first iteration of this character did die at level, I believe, 91 from user error. I was not paying attention to the screen, I was reading chat, yep, I'm gonna blame chat, and I got a bunch of stacks of corrupted blood, and yeah, it's a pretty straightforward rip. But I enjoyed the character so much that I went and dumped pretty much all the currency that I had at that moment into getting it off the ground again. I was dead broke, but the build was functional, and I've since grinded my way back up to having a little bit of money in the stash, though nothing too crazy, and a nice set of gear, way nicer than I had before. And I mentioned I died at level 91 last time. I'm level 96 now, closing in on 97. I've been playing the character a lot, and I've been enjoying it a ton too. I wanted to give you all a brief overview of the changes that I've made with this iteration, how I've improved it, and where I'm going from here, because we still actually have quite a bit of min-maxing to do. That was a T16 Olroth, so my damage is pretty respectable. I was able to bring that guy down, and I've comfortably done a few other mini-bosses here and there. I've done Elder, I've done Shaper Guardians, I've done Elder Guardians, I've done Conquerors, all the way up to T16s. Haven't done Maven. Don't really feel like doing Cyrus, because poison builds are really annoying versus Cyrus. Every time he splits, he cleans all of his poison stacks off, so you're kind of playing at a disadvantage there as a poison build, but I'll probably get around to it eventually. I'm just not very excited for that fight. But yeah, I'll go over some of the gear that we have. So, let's start top down. Helmet. I wanted to get the Spectral Helix rotates an additional time enchant, because I have heard from some people that tightens the rotations, because it does more rotations in the same amount of space, which on larger targets can result in an additional hit, which is like a 1.5 times damage multiplier, because you normally hit twice with a Helix if you position well. Hitting 3 times would be kind of insane. But I was spamming Harvest Defense rerolls on a hat, and I hit this. Well, I hit the prefixes to this, and then I did prefixes can't be changed in Chaos reroll, and I hit T1 Chaos Res with an accuracy roll, and Room to Craft the Duration ailment mod. So I just kind of kept the first good Uber Lab enchant that I managed to roll from a handful of Uber Lab runs, and Blood Rage attack speed is a pretty generically solid enchant. I may go back to Lab to re-enchant this at some point, but I don't really want to because of the Lab. But yes, it's very high ward, Chaos Res for Divine Flesh, which is in the build now. Accuracy is always nice. The Ailment Craft is huge for damage for poison builds, so an open suffix for that is very important. The chest piece, we actually have a fairly finished one. This could be better. Obviously could be better than Crafted Life. Could be higher level, so we can get additional curse out of this slot. The eye level here isn't good enough for that, but it's a very solid one. It's a Grasping Mail. For those of you who don't know what that is, if you vendor 60 breach rings to a vendor, they will give you a random Grasping Mail back. Now, to be clear, Grasping Mail does not have the capability to roll breach-related mods natively. By that I mean, if I were to scour this, which I will never do, but if I were to scour this and then alt spam it, I will literally never see global defenses or any other breach-related mods. The only way you get those mods is through the vendor. When you vendor 60 rings, it comes with between 1 and 3 breach-related mods. That's what you get. If you need different ones, you gotta get 60 more rings. It's very annoying. It's at the crux of the build, and it's why I don't really recommend that you necessarily follow this build, though you can use a Skin of the Loyal if you get the right colors. Admittedly, that doesn't have a life roll, nor does it have Fizz taken as Chaos, which we got through a Hunter Slam on this chess piece, so it's a lot less defensive, less hardcore viable, but you can use it for the build. The reason we go for Grasping Mail, which I was kind of skirting around there, is the 100% increased global defenses. That literally doubles the ward on the build, and this build uses Night Grip, which gives added Chaos equal to a quarter of our ward. When my Flask is up, I have 2.2k ward, and I'm a Pathfinder, so my Flask is pretty much always up. That is more than 500 added flat chaos damage to any hit that we do, which is like more than a couple claws worth of flat damage, you know, depending on how well rolled the claws are. That is a lot. That is more than half of our damage. So we want that global defenses, or we will lose probably like a quarter to a third of my damage if I didn't have this mod. It's very important. We'll move on to the shield. This is something I'm doing differently than the last version. I believe I had minimum endurance charges on a Warlord shield. This time around, I went for a high life, high evasion ailment avoid shield. That is so that I could cap both shock and freeze immunity. I don't technically have ignite immunity on this build. I could if I were to throw a point here, but I actually deemed it not worth the points because I am very strapped for passive points right now. I have a lot of ignite avoid, I have really good LE mitigation, and I have really good sustain, so I'm not really too scared of ignites. But if I really was for some reason, or if I was going into, like, say, an Enslaver fight with nasty mods, I could just spec this point over here, and suddenly I'm ignite immune for that fight at the cost of a little bit of life. Let's look at the weapon. We've got a, honestly, fairly basic weapon, but it's really good for how simple it is. Like, it's not an Elder weapon, so it doesn't have any fancy influence mods. This is one of the places we can still improve. But for being a basic uninfluenced claw, it's a very good basic uninfluenced claw. We've got T1 attack speed, T1 crit, T1 poison. That is really the core of this weapon, because once you get the suffixes in place, which I did through Essence Spam. I Essence Spammed until I hit T1 crit, and then I annulled to open up a suffix and open up a prefix because it was fully affixed when I Essence Spammed into the claw, so 2 lucky annulls, opened up a prefix and a suffix. And then I did Suffixes Can't Be Changed, Chaos reroll. Like the Harvest Chaos mods are more likely reroll. The only prefix that can add is flat chaos, and the suffixes it can add are chaos res or poison chance. I lucked into T1 poison chance, and I got the chaos damage prefix, which wasn't luck because that was literally the only prefix it could give me. So it's a relatively straightforward crafting process. It just is a bit expensive because you need the 2x for the suffixes can't be changed, and you need to be able to spam out some essences until you get crit off of a Shrieking Zeal. Shrieking Zeal is the T1 attack speed essence for reference. The boots are fairly basic, actually. This is another spot that I'm working on upgrading. We do have T1% ward. Sorry, T2% ward, actually, so I guess that could be upgraded. And then some move speed and crafted life. This is really where I'm getting a lot of my resistances, though. Until I can make that up elsewhere, likely on jewelry, I am going to have to stick with these. But I want eventually to try and get, say, hunter boots with either tailwind or faster poison. Will require another hunter exalt, which this build has already eaten multiple of. It's gotten pretty expensive at this point. Or to just go for like a really nice high life and ward total here. Or both. I mean, both is possible, but that would just be expensive. For the amulet, we have a pretty basic life res, chaos res amulet with stats. This is another place I could improve. I don't have a hunter amulet with dot multi yet. That's a big deal. Hunter dot multi amulet does beat a global defenses talisman. If you're playing this in softcore trade, though, you can probably find a global defenses talisman with decent rolls for relatively cheap if you want to use that as a interim amulet, so long as you can solve your stats elsewhere. The absolute best in slot would be a Envy All's Uprising, but those don't exist in hardcore trade. Maybe in softcore trade. If you can get one in softcore trade, that would be disgusting for the build. Just so much damage, while also still being good stats and life. just gross. This ring is also kind of a weak spot for the build right now, but it's doing 3 very important things. I'm getting a lot of flat life out of this, which I have multiple pieces of gear with either crafted life or no life on them, so the flat life here is actually a really big deal. I'm getting a min endurance charge mod that was unveiled onto it, so it comes with endurance charge on kill, which helps with my Physmit while mapping quite a lot. And then an open prefix for minus mana. The suffixes are pretty messy otherwise, though, with life regen not really being ideal, and the mana prefix also being pretty unimportant. So there's a couple dead mods here, but the 3 mods that it does have are all very important. That plus a coral ring base means it gives me almost 110 life. So I'm happy with the ring, though I will be looking to improve it. I want to get a Despair on hit ring because I'm sick of self-casting Despair, but the game does not want to give me any luck trying to roll Despair on hit. I've done caster rerolls on like probably 50 harvest patches now, and I've seen it once. I'm just getting very unlucky in that regard. But, you know, I got really good luck on the helmet and really good luck on the shields, so I can't really complain. We have a Circle of Nostalgia here, the implicits being Chaos Damage and Global Accuracy. They're both nice. They're not the best implicits you could get. You can get, like, Percent Life or Despair on hit or Onslaught, and there's a lot of room for synth implicits to be insane, but, you know, good luck with that. More importantly, the affixes, a high all-attribute roll, and then Chaos Damage, while affected by Herald of Agony, and Herald of Agony buff effect. This is a lot of damage for the build. You could, in Softcore, go for a double Circle of Nostalgia, but I can't really justify that in Hardcore. As I said, there's a lot of powerful tools I'm getting out of this ring. And for the belt, we have something fairly straightforward, though nicely rolled. It's a Hunter Stygian Vise with T2 life, couple of good res rolls, reduced flask charges used, and then chance for flasks to not consume charges. I did Hunter Slam this earlier because the only possible things I could slam on it were Flask on crit, Percent Life, or Chaos Damage. I was really hoping to hit Percent Life to push me closer and closer to the 7k life break point that I would love to eventually reach, and we're pretty far from right now. But we hit T3% Chaos Damage, of course. Not very lucky on that slam, but still a very nice belt, so I honestly can't really complain. Normally, I wouldn't go into detail about flasks, but on a Pathfinder build, they're pretty darn important. So, Taste of Hate. This is another big source of our physical mitigation. We have Endurance charges, we have Fortify, we have Fizz taken as Chaos, and we have Taste of Hate. Those are your fundamentals for Fizz mitigation in this build. If you're playing in Softcore, you can of course swap this for a Damage Flask. Either the Cortex Flask or a Coralitos are both good, depending on your budget. Quicksilver Flask. We needed a spot for warding, so I couldn't afford Adrenaline here, but after the Adrenaline nerfs, I'm not too sad about that. This one's very important. I find Surgeons is the best prefix for uptime in single-target situations, and you need a rune flaring suffix. Without that suffix, we would lose like a solid 300 to 400 ward from our flask being up. It's very, very important. So yeah, you want an iron flask of rune flaring here. And then the Stun Avoid Craft on this flask, plus all of our flask effect, plus the Stun Avoid on the tree around Ranger makes us not quite stun immune, but like 85 to 90% chance to avoid being stunned, which is more than enough. Stuns are just never even a problem on this build. Certainly not while mapping, so I'm very happy with this flask. And then a Seething Flask of Staunching on the Life Flask. Nothing too crazy there. I do also have a Corrupting Blood immune jewel now, so I don't have to worry about dying to Corrupted Blood like I did in the first version of the build. I've also swapped around the tree somewhat. You can see I've got a Timeless Jewel in here now. We've got Divine Flesh going, which is great for both our Chaos and Ellie mitigation. I only have 81% Chaos res, but you know, if you really wanted to push that, you could go for a Hunter Shield over the Ailment Avoid Shield, or if you're crazy lucky, you could do both. But again, that's just more room for the build to improve. For now, 81% Chaos Res is still quite effective for both Chaos and Ellie mitigation with Divine Flesh. And for the other jewels in the tree, I've got some clusters now. So we cut out the duelist area of the tree. I used to come down here and get Golem's Blood and this life and all that. Instead now, I've picked up some life on a couple of small flask cluster jewels. I don't know where the word flask went in my brain. But yeah, I picked up Peak Vigor on both of these clusters, and one of them has Regen, and one of them has Spiked Concoction. Spiked Concoction being the much more important one. One moment while I get this trade, I forgot to go on D&D. Prime Resonators have been a huge moneymaker for me in Hardcore Trade because nobody wants to delve for some reason, so I've just been running the new Vestir nodes that give you a bunch of Azurite, and I just speed run through like T16 maps with Nico missions because I have like 70 Nico missions to burn through, and then I go to Nico in the mines and I buy Prime Resonators for 300 Azurite each and sell them at 2C each, and I've made like hundreds and hundreds of chaos doing that. It's pretty much how I've funded half the upgrades on this build, but don't tell anybody else in Hardcore Trade about that strat, okay? I don't want my market to be ruined. Anyways, where was I? I was talking about cluster jewels. Anyways, yes. Spiked Concoction gives you Alchemist Genius when you use a flask, which is has a chance to give Alchemist Genius. No, it just gives it to you. Okay, the one that has a chance to, I think, is on the Mariketh Jewel. This one you just gain it on flask use, so it's permanent. It's always up, which is 20% flask charge gen and 10% effective flasks. Really powerful buff. And then for our large cluster jewel, I've got Wind Up for power charge gen, and currently Fuel the Fight, which gives me some mana leech and some attack speed. It's a fine notable. I would prefer Disease Vector here, which turns off enemy regen and is really useful versus Maven and some expedition mobs. But I don't have a perfect cluster jewel yet. You know, I'm working on that still. Any notable in the back doesn't really matter. I don't have the passive points to pick this up safely or easily anyways. If you were in softcore, you could go for, say, all three of these actually: Fuel the Fight, Wind Up, and Disease Vector, and then just take the full wheel, cut a couple life nodes somewhere. But in hardcore, I wouldn't really recommend that. And what else? I think I've covered pretty much all the changes and updates to the build, as well as each of the gear slots. So yeah, thanks for making this far. If you did, I really appreciate it. I am going to be continuing to min-max this build on stream, and I'm probably going to be pushing it to 100. And yeah, I hope to see you for some of that content. Thanks for watching. I'm going to take this trade, and I'm going to head off. See you guys.